Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. So this video is just a continuation of the description of various characters by Chaucer in the General Prologue of the Canterbury Tales. So if you missed the previous video, you can check the link in the description below. It covered the line-by-line summary of the General Prologue and the description of the knight. So to start this video, firstly let's just quickly recap the important points of the portrait of knight. The knight had good, strong, finely bred horses, which he never boasted about, which shows he was a very modest person. Secondly, he was a person of great power and strength, but he never ever showed off. He had always fought for the Christian faith and he had survived 15 mortal battles, which itself testifies to his strength. He followed the code of humility and was humble and modest in his daily actions. Coming to the physical appearance of knight, he didn't wear any costly clothes made up of silk or satin. Instead, he wore clothes which were made up of cotton, as he never ever liked to show off. He never spoke any harsh or rude word about anybody. The knight has always been honored for his bravery everywhere, and he loved chivalry, fidelity, generosity, and courtesy. So these were the major important points about the portrait of knight which we had studied in the previous video. And one more thing I want to include is that knight is one of those characters which has not been satirized by Chaucer. Coming to the next character in the series is the squire. So from lines 79 to 100 we have the description of the next pilgrim, the squire, which happens to be the knight's son. Till the line 78, we have the description of the knight, and from line 79 to 100, we have the description of the squire. Now, squire is described by Chaucer as a lusty young man, around 20 years old, of moderate height, who is good looking, and one who enjoys horse riding. The physical description of the squire by Chaucer illustrates him as if he was a Roman statue, or somebody who has been taken from a chivalric romance stories. Chaucer shows us a different side of squire than most of the squires in the Middle Ages. He shows us the side of the squire's sexuality and song and poem writing, that is, his artistic inclinations, and more emphasis has been given on the description of the physical appearance of squire, which has its own importance, that why Chaucer has mostly emphasized on the physical description of the squire the more. Now coming to the physical appearance of the squire, he is complete in contrast with his father. Unlike the knight who dresses so modestly as to not show off, squire wears elaborately decorated clothing that reveals him as a lusty youth as well as a fighter. His tunic is embroidered with flowers and his gown is short with wide sleeves. Chaucer also tells us that squire is an accomplished gentleman with an artistic inclination. Because he knows how to compose songs, he writes verses, also dances, draws, writes, and even carves the meat for his father at the time of dinner, which shows that he has good manners. He is a gentleman. But he stays out all night and he is very prone to pursuing ladies that keeps him up all night. He sleeps so little at night that Chaucer has described it, he sleeps as little as nightingale. So the Chaucer's description of squire gives us the impression that he is an immature, self-indulgent, a little spoiled, and a bit of pretty boy, who is prone to pursuing ladies that keeps him up all night. Talking about the military skills of the squire, Chaucer says that he has been on chevauchee with his father in Flanders, Artois, and Picardy. This has been described in the line 86 of the General Prologue. The whole emphasis which Chaucer gives on the physical description of the squire is that he completely is in admiration with his youthfulness. He even says that he was as fresh as is the month of the May. But within the description of the squire, there is a hidden satire by the Chaucer. Chaucer says that the squire had curly hairs, but at the same time, curling one's hair during Chaucer's time would have been very time consuming, something only people with the luxury of free time would be able to do. Thus, through these lines, Chaucer tried to portray that rather than spending his free time training or otherwise better preparing for knighthood, The squire instead devotes his time to preening. He is so conscious about his looks. He wants to look good and he tries every single way for that. Although the squire is not directly satired by Chaucer, but within his physical description, we can find a hidden satire. One can see how much the squire values his physical appearance by Chaucer's characterization of him. The first 12 lines of the squire's portrait not only creates for the reader a mental image of the squire, but they also serve to satirize his efforts to look as physically attractive as possible. Although Chaucer admires Squire for his youthfulness and is also impressed by his skill and humility, but the irony in the Squire's case is how he is the knight's son and his apprentice, yet he is more worried about his appearance and women than the chivalric code. The knight is an image that all the true knights struggle to be. He has all the chivalric qualities such as dedication, bravery, and honesty. But the squire, on the other hand, is such a shallow, flamboyant, and devious person. Chaucer also states that the squire may not be the most trustworthy man because he fights for the approval of women and not for the sake of the people. So, thus, we can say that although the squire is not directly satired by Chaucer, but we can find a hidden satire in his description. The lines 101 to 117 describes the next pilgrim in the sequence, the yeoman. The yeoman is the only servant the knight has with him. The description of the yeoman also majorly focuses on the physical description, physical appearance, and the skills which he possessed. The yeoman is not much elaborately described by Chaucer in the prologue. So, directly coming to the physical description of the yeoman wears a green hood and a coat. And one of the skills which Chaucer describes or emphasizes in the prologue is that he was also an excellent woodworker because he spent a lot of his time in the woods and was very wise in the ways of the forest, which also shows that he was a good forester. Plus, he was a brilliant archer, as he took great care of his bows and peacock feathered arrows. The quality of the peacock feather itself indicated that he was a meticulous man who paid attention to the little details. He was also shown as a God believer and a sentinel. The yeoman had a head shaped like a nut and is dressed in green. He carried a bow and peacock feathered arrows, along with a shield and a sword on one side and a shiny dagger as sharp as the point of a spear with a well decorated handle on the other side. He wore a bright arm guard upon his arm, and he had a hunter's horn tied to a belt of green color over his shoulders. He wore a brace to protect his forearm while shooting his bow. The yeoman had finely cropped hairs, that is, he had short hairs and tanned skin. The yeoman wore a silver medal or a silver badge of Saint Christopher, which shows his religious respect or his even religious inclination. Chaucer calls yeoman a proper forester. Why? Because he was capable of handling his equipment with great efficiency. He carried with him a bundle of bright, sharp, peacock-feathered arrows under his belt, and the feather on his arrows never dropped as the arrows fell, which made the narrator guess that he is a proper forester. The yeoman is also one of those pilgrims which are not satired by Chaucer. When Chaucer describes a yeoman's clothing, weapons, and tools, he is indirectly praising yeoman because all his tools, all his weapons, clothing are in top condition, which not only states that he is good at his job, but he also takes care of his equipment. The Chaucer's description of yeoman is very positive, as it uses all the positive adjectives and a positive attitude, which itself shows that the yeoman is not satired by Chaucer. Everyone, this is all for this video. The next pilgrims will be described in the upcoming videos, so stay tuned to my channel, and if you like this video, please do like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.